Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. I'm Goldie, and here's Anya,
Hi.
Lisa Bodie, Dea, Marin, Jake, and Tyler. We'll hear more from each of them and what their inspiration in their each individual projects has been, but I'd like to share just a little bit about where the inspiration for this panel came from. And I'll give a little shout out to Lydia. Lisa already mentioned that, unfortunately she's not here with us today, but her spirit is most definitely infused in everything that's going on. She had so much to do with the production of this. So sending her lots of love with her new little baby. And yeah, Lydia and I were just actually cleaning her kitchen one day, and she was like, I need one more idea for a panel. And I was like, well, if we go with the theme of like reimagining our future, how we wanted something that can kind of bring together people that really are doing, creating the world that we want to see. Like that's kind of the spirit of the Energy Fair. I think we bring a lot of people in who have really innovative ideas, and we're a bunch of like-minded people out here, so it's really nice to get everyone together to talk about the future and how do we actually start living the life that we want to see and reimagining, new ways and doing things that actually work and make sense and are in line with our values. So that was the inspiration, and of course, just like everything happens with the Energy Fair, like people just fall into place here. So we have these awesome people who are doing a really like the depth of knowledge that these people have in their specific projects and life is incredible, and it's also all over the board. So really, like when we think of reimagining our future, it's every aspect. It's education, it's death, it's birth, it's prison systems and food systems and everything. So there's no rock unturned over here. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Anya. I'm standing in for Lydia. I was helping her with booking and some of the many jobs that she has to produce this event. And yeah, really grateful to step in. I have a podcast called A Millennial's Guide to Saving the World, which I talk to people all the time about how can we sort of face these challenges that we're facing right now with intention. And the podcast is kind of ironic because I don't really know how we're going to save the world, but I think what we're all doing here is a big part of that, being as local as possible and saving maybe our world and our backyard. So yeah, grateful to stand in and be with all these really amazing people. So why don't we start with some introductions from you guys. Who are you? How did you get started with the project that you're working on? And what are some of the projects that you're working on?
Okay, good morning. As I mentioned, my name's Lisa Bodie. So I'm the current director of the Energy Fair. It's the 5th year in that role. Yeah. Ooh. So then also we started an offshoot called the Crestone Energy Exchange, and that was to allow us to engage in more of political activity or legislation so that we kept it separate from the fair as a nonprofit. And under that, so you see the fair, and then with that, we have an ongoing education series that we've added with Goldie. So those are those two aspects within the fair. And then with the Energy Exchange, we started a community firewood program, and we were really trying to remodel the structure of where everything is just seeing capital as your one resource. So we expanded it where if you can pay for firewood, amazing. If you can't and you can work with us, we want to teach you how do you use the chainsaws, the maintenance, how do you get out into the woods and season it. So then we did a work trade. And then with Neighbors Helping Neighbors, we partnered so that those who really couldn't, whether it was age, disabilities, finances, that needed that free wood, we can still service those people in our community. So we expanded that. Sorry, I'm going really long. And then the free box. So the free box, as most of you, if you haven't been here, it's a place where people can bring items that are gently used, books, houseware, and donate them as an exchange for the community. So we're closing that loop on our waste stream that's going to the landfill. And then the third aspect of that is mindful land use. And that was where we started working with the county with codes and minimum square footage to energy conservation. And so that's the exchange piece. So that's the current ones. And how I got here was because Donovan, like 6 years ago, wrote me into this with a steak and wine dinner.
Hi, I'm Dea Scheide, and if you know me, you probably know me as a school teacher over at the Crestone Charter School, just up the hill over there. I came to Crestone about 12 years ago to be a part of that school. I had been to Crestone once or twice, and I had heard about this incredible charter school that was born out of the love and efforts of this community and the parents that weren't quite satisfied with the choices out there. And I came and, well, I heard there was a job opening. I came up here and I was just really blown away by the teaching staff that I saw here, which were so passionate, so free and creative in what they were creating together through experiential learning and outdoor experiences and ski programs and the incredible Link High School that was conceived of as with its mentorship program. I just really want to be a part of that. I was doing some teaching in other places, always on the fringes of the public school world because I, for one, feel stifled by the public school systems, and I know probably a lot of people do. So I was just really thrilled to come to a school that felt like a community school, a family school. And it's been, for me, the most incredible creative outlet. I feel like all of my love and my creativity can get channeled into these projects. So I've been teaching music and art, and right now I'm teaching 4th and 5th grade. Having an amazing time, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of great things to talk about, so I'm going to pass the mic. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Marin, and me and my partner Jake are the creators of a multimedia project. It's a film, it's going to be a book, it's also going to be, it is already podcasts and other writing, and essentially the project is basically about climate change is a jumping off point for us to really start to analyze civilization and the direction of civilization and what kind of world we actually want to live in. And it's this coming of age story about basically us going on this journey of trying to understand why the world is the way that it is and to understand ways that we might be able to get out of it and really start to ingratiate ourselves with ecosystems again, become protagonists in nature and start building communities that are healthy. And we have just taken this very long journey, and this film series and the project, it covers a lot of different topics, but we focus on philosophy and civilizational stories. We focus on agriculture. We focus on, just all of these ways that we're trying to manage climate change that sort of tend to take for granted the industrial civilization that we are currently a part of. And we tend to not question the premise enough, and from our view, of where this is going and are we happy with the way that civilization is going. And so it's really a story of two young people who are trying to understand the world as it is and hopefully show that there's other ways to live and that there's no one right way to live. And there's so many potentialities and possibilities once we realize that we can break free from the sort of chains of civilization.
That was perfectly said, so I'll just pass it along.
The project is called Death in the Garden.
Hi, I'm Tyler Barrett. I feel very honored to be up here with all these wonderful humans, so thank you for having me up here. I'm basically here as an advocate for the fungi, as always. I am working with mushrooms. We have a family-run mushroom farm over in Saguache. It's grown in some really weirdly serendipitous ways. I got into mushrooms specifically because I was trying to heal some of my own things that were going on in my life. Anywhere between like the physical things that were happening and actually like the mental and spiritual side of it too. But lion's mane really was what got me into like healing my brain after the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, after hitting my head so many times snowboarding, getting all these concussions, realizing that I'm anxious, depressed, and all these weird things are happening that don't feel normal or like don't feel like they're aligning with how I'm actually living. once I started incorporating mushrooms into my own life, those things started to align a lot easier, and I could see things more clearly. The lion's mane just literally cleared me up. And then psilocybin, honestly, I'm a huge advocate for as well, in terms of like the mental benefits and the spiritual health that you can gain from that. So I think through some of my own traumas, childhood trauma specifically for the psilocybin, physical trauma through hitting my head so many times for the lion's mane, not being able to sleep properly because of some of those traumas, reishi comes in. So there's all these, like, every single thing that I was dealing with in my own life, I saw a solution with fungi. So then I was like, I just got to follow this more, and I found it in college, and all my professors were like, this is some super weird fringe topic that we don't really know about either, so you should just continue to learn about it. I really, like, all my teachers at MSU Denver, like, so much love to them, so much. They encouraged me so much to follow this weird passion that's just growing mushrooms now, but it's so much more than that also. It's actually healing the people around us, which is super impactful, healing ourselves, which is also impactful, healing some of the ecosystem, which is super impactful as well. So it brings me full circle to now we're working with the community for certain types of projects. I'm sure we'll get into this later, but one thing that I'm super excited about is the landfill inoculation that I'm going to try to work on. So I'm working with the Saguache County commissioners and a few other people to make sure that we can get the landfill inoculated with certain types of fungi to see if that actually has some sort of benefit in breaking down plastic and trash, so that we don't have to continually make all these new cells and then just continually keep putting trash in the ground and trash in the ground and trash in the ground. I'll speak to that probably on this panel a little bit more, but thank you for having me.
All right, so thank you all for your introductions. And I am feeling like I just really want to dive right into it and see what you guys think about, like, when you imagine the long-term impacts of what you're doing in your communities, locally, and then maybe even on a larger scale. Like, what is the most exciting, perfect vision of what you have for where we're headed, and like the most wonderful possibilities in your projects and how they impact your local communities?
Woo. Okay. Well, part of it for me is actually happening now, the reimagine, because 3 years ago, we started on a theme with a fair of reconnect, and that was during COVID. And we were one of the only, if not the only, event that happened in Saguache County in 2020. And we had to make a decision as a crew. The town wouldn't accept our application. So we went to private land, and Eric Mackey donated his 40 acres for us to start building. But we then we didn't have any infrastructure. This was basically in the soil, the desert, out in the county. And the fact that we did it and kept with that reconnect theme that we all have to really be supporting each other now more than ever was great. And then we went into last year was reclaim, where we realized, okay, we're still here. We need to reclaim these rights that we have around our building, around our food systems, our schools with our children. It was all of the structures around us. We did a lot of education last year on no, we can really reclaim our power. So that brought us to reimagine. So I have to say, for me, to see this park and to see everything and all of the new people, we filled every crew lead this year, and it's the first time we've been able to do that. So that I see the reimagining now into the future with this, as we're impacting and really honing down the audience that's coming here, that we're going to start to create stronger networks and that mycelial web within these more natural, earth-based communities with each other. We have to start taking this pod and be a model for other places so that we can continue this work. I did have some notes too, though. I think one thing, though, is locally, I really would like to see that we have, similar with the free boxes, that we get into a natural building resource center. So we're trading our materials. It goes along with that ongoing education, but we need a physical location that's not a private place. It needs to be community access that you drop off those 10 extra Adobe bricks, that other like roll of, ice and water, your extra lumber, and that we start to really manage that like a Habitat for Humanity, because we're at the end of the road and getting resources trucked in. So that's one piece. And then that we start looking at our capital in different ways. As I mentioned before, we have money, but when you look at this event, most of these people are doing this out of the love and the passion for this, and that we start to value the exchange of resources. So if it's not finances, we need to start looking at what do we have with our energy. Our time's a huge resource. Time banking has been a big thing, and we've tried it as a community, but I'd love to see how we start to reframe that structure of exchange. And let's see if I had something else here. Oh, and then with our codes. Because we started working with the county, if you were here with that natural building panel yesterday, we've done a lot of work to retain our frontier living. And one of them was with 150 square feet is the state's minimum that you can live in. They wanted to push it to 900. We actually worked with the county and got them to keep with the state, because we showed that you can be happy, healthy, and probably even a more contributing member of your community when you're not weighted down with debt. So along with those codes, regulations are getting the financing or the loans with our banks and the insurance problems. We have all of these structures. How do we get our natural building community really aligned so that we can be supporting each other, or maybe creating our own systems with it, loaning to each other. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Wow. You're so amazing.
Now who's going to do it?
Okay, so what was the question?
What's like your vision for the long-term
Ah,
impact?
Okay. Well, I get to work with all of my young friends in the community. And when you get to work with kids, the potential is just very obvious, very inherent. I don't know when this started happening with me. Sometime after I had my own kids, I started to notice that when I would, look at, well, any of us, but I'm here to talk about, to advocate for kids today, but when we look at each other, we're seeing the faces that our ancestors have kind of passed to us from way, way back. And somehow I started to see a child not as that kid, but as that's a kid who's on their way to becoming someone, even an elder, soon, before we know it, really. And that's incredible to me to see like each one of us as an ancestor becoming, and also wearing the face that our ancestors have passed to us. And that kind of takes me as a teacher out of the immediate realms of the problems of the day. If anyone has ever worked in a school, you know that we can really get snowed under with all of the little issues we're dealing with. But to take that long term, we can even, we started calling it, we had a lot of discussion about 5G around here, and we started talking about 7G, the 7 generations, and to look at that as a person as just a snapshot in life that extends from way back all the way into a distant future. Suddenly there's so much potential, and what we're doing is that much more important and that much less important at the same time. So that's what inspires me. And I also had an experience really notable for me when I was early in my teaching journey of trying to deliver a unit on environmentalism and why we should recycle. And the whole thing started out with a big, in-depth teaching about the garbage and the plastic in the ocean and the landfills. And I was watching these middle school kids slowly sink under the weight of all of that. And then I'm supposed to say, oh, here, let's recycle. And this is the lesson. What I realized then that I try to carry with me is that when we love our community, we want to work for it. And when we love our planet and we love our lives, we want to work for it. So on a good day, or the well that I try to draw from is love of community, love of life, music, art, appreciation, and joy. Those are the kind of things that really seem to get us excited, especially kids. When they hear about a project like yours, Tyler, they're gonna want to know about that. What? Wait, mushrooms can help us clean up this landfill? You mean they can do that too? So that's part of like kind of the way my mind works. Is when I hear about a project like that, I'm thinking there's an opportunity. That's something that we can get into. And again, that's the reason why I'm at the Crestone Charter School, because there still is that freedom and that sense of adventure, that sense of inspiration that we, as teachers and as students and families, we get to get inspired by something and follow and see where it's going to lead us. So, yeah, thanks.
So much of our project focuses on the role of culture and its impact on the converging crises we're facing here on Earth. And so what I really hope for why we're trying to focus so much on culture is quite often with the problems we see in the world and how we try to structure ourselves in communities and address the problems we're facing, we quite often look at symptoms and surface level problems as the problem itself. And we feel that until we as communities and a society at large really address the reality of how, as humans, being a cultural species is unavoidable. We all operate under a cultural narrative that tells us who we are, where we came from, and where we're going, and what the point of our lives here is on Earth. And we feel that quite often we don't start from that very base place of the problem-solving step. And so much of our work focuses on how we can potentially be trying to solve so many problems while still using the same cultural mythologies that tell us how to be in the world. So I think for me, the biggest hope that I have is that if we're successful in the work we do and our attempts to communicate these concepts, is that ultimately we can begin at an even deeper place to inform us on how to not only form our communities, but address pollution, climate change, our toxified environment, and that if we can address the fact that we tell ourselves ambient stories about not only who we are as individuals, but as a community at large, then we might find some more sturdy, solid, holistic approaches that address even wider ranges of problems rather than reductionist mechanistic attempts to solve certain things. So that's my biggest hope, is that we can really look at ourselves and ask what stories are we telling ourselves? And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Citizen scientists. Just kidding. No, but for real though, I'm like really trying to promote citizen science as much as possible, because for one, it is the idea that we can all be scientifically literate enough to understand these studies that are coming out and to work with them in our own benefits. We don't even have to understand the studies. We can actually just experiment and we can just try things, because the way that we've been operating is obviously not really working. And I love the way that Daya is really like touching on the children, because I really truly think if we get the kids inspired by the mycoverse and the microverse, and specifically biomimicry, which is just relating what nature is already doing to solve all of our issues, I think we're going to solve all of our problems no problem. There's going to be problems, obviously, but it's going to be a lot easier, and there's actually hope. So on the back of our business cards, we put where there's mycelium, there is hope. And I really, truly believe that if we do get these kids inspired enough to love their planet, to love each other enough, that they'll be inspired to look at these things that we've been overlooking that are literally right in front of us. We just need kind of like, or under us. It's all right there. I truly believe that nature has a solution for every single problem that we've created. And we may not reach this like enlightened stage where we solve all of it, but we just keep trudging on in the conviction that our children will be able to figure something out, or their children's children will be able to figure something out with this. And that's really where my hope comes from. And that's why I want to just advocate for fungi specifically and the microverse, all microorganisms, honestly. Like, they're playing such a key, important role in all of our survival. They're the only reasons we're here. I mean, like most of our makeup is literally microbial. We're not even really that human. So there is hope, and I see it in mycelium. So I want to keep spreading mycelium, and my job here is to spread that mycelium in terms of maybe knowledge, but literally spreading the mycelium as well and getting like inoculum to people for them to spread mycelium, or even just introducing them to mushrooms for the first time, or anything that honestly gets people thinking in that pathway of there are solutions, and we don't have to see like so much doom and gloom. Like there is hope. We just have to get super, super creative. And we have to be really passionate and inspire the kids to be passionate about this planet and about each other. And I really do think that's what it comes down to. And citizen scientists are really the ones that are going to be changing things at an exponential rate. It's going to come from grassroots level. I truly think that. I have no hope in corporations or large scale themes like that. I do think it's going to come from a community perspective and grassroots movements and citizen science. Like, let's just get these kids stoked, you know, instead of, you know, weighing them down with all this, like, this is super messed up. We're in a messed up place. That's all right. There's solutions, though. We got to keep talking about that.
Yeah, you guys can keep it. Yeah, I wanted to sort of pick up on this idea of hope and inspiration and how you guys stay inspired. I think a lot of what we're talking about can get really heavy, especially when we're talking about the climate and the culture. It's like these things feel so far out of reach and out of grasp. And before I sort of hand the mic over, I wanted to share this funny story that Jake and Marin actually had the idea for their project, I don't know, a few years ago in our living room. And they're in their early 20s and super psyched and like, we're going to make this movie about how regenerative agriculture is going to save the world. And over the years that progressed, I sort of saw them get like more and more cynical and just more and more overwhelmed by the complexity that they stumbled into that they didn't expect necessarily. And when I told them that they should really come to Crestone after they've spent all this time interviewing people and traveling the world, you know, they sort of expressed to me like, well, you know, I feel like we've gotten so bogged down by all of the obstacles and also being sort of concerned of being, you know, downers in the community. And I think like for me, as far as inspiration and hope, what was so interesting to reflect on is I've been coming to Crestone on and off for 4 or so years and being here full time for a year, like to be able to say to people who have been doing this project on such a global level, to be like, the solutions you guys are talking about are actually possible here, and that context is so important, and feeling really, grateful to be in a place where there are some obstacles, but maybe not as many, and that's what inspires me, and I think, continues the passion. So curious to hand it over to you guys. How do you maintain that hope and inspiration in the face of what sometimes feels like overwhelming? Yeah.
Should I go? Everybody feeling it? I want to go after.
Well, I think that it's been a long journey for me as far as like what helps me maintain hope and optimism. And like I think for me, and I think this is different for everybody, but I feel a lot of resonance with the idea that I'm here to be a witness. And so I think that everybody has a different role in the ecosystem of the world that we're creating. And I think some people maybe get the hope and the inspiration from the darkness more than others. And so, but there needs to be like the light bringers too. And so I think for me, it's like, I just really resonate with the idea that someone has to see it as clearly as possible to be able to articulate and witness and hold space for the depth of complexity that we face as a species. Because otherwise, you know, some of these local solutions might not end up being as productive as we want them to be. If there's all of these other contexts that maybe aren't being considered. And I just think that part of the problem in our society is we've been so disconnected from the systems that keep us alive. And so often we're not aware of the trade-offs that we're involved in or the negative externalities of what we're doing or what we're trying to produce. And so I think that we can all experience hope and a sense of optimism when we really figure out like what our role is. And your role might be to like, you know, sit in the shit and like really feel that, or like hold space for people going through grief processes and being death doulas. You know, there is like a dark side that I think can be balanced with the light side in a really productive and positive way. And I think we've, like for the past 10,000 years, we've been really elevating the light and elevating this sort of daytime consciousness and the more masculine productive energy. And I think that there's space for the death, there's space for that. And we have to start acknowledging that in order to bring the life in.
I heard this term recently called doomer optimism, which I really like. And I think it's been indicative of our experience of traveling the world and making an attempt to truly see how far we've gone with this terraforming of industrial civilization. It can really weigh on you when you realize there's no stretch of the earth this meta-narrative that we're enacting hasn't reached to, and that can really weigh on you. But I think through the radical acceptance of this situation, it really helps you see a pathway out. And I think what gives me hope is to, indeed, places like Crestone, where it's so fertile for and open for new ideas and new ways of being and living and structuring ourselves. And also while traveling the world and seeing how bad things truly are, pockets of places where stories are being told differently. It really is happening. And I think sometimes we have to push things so far before we can even accept a new possibility. And so that's what gives me hope, is that we've visited with people, and it looks different in so many places, of stories being enacted in different ways, and different cultural narratives, what we should be doing with ourselves, actually being enacted in the world, and having them work in myriad different creative, abstract ways that fills me with hope. So there is potential, and it's not over. We can really do good on this planet.
I love that you just said acceptance, because that's something that I think when I explain these doomy, gloomy situations to people, they're just straight denial. And it's just like, I don't even want to see that. Why would you even bring that up? You're just like definitely ruining the vibe. But it's only through the acceptance and working through that we can actually end up finding solutions. Otherwise, we're just going to shut down and be like, oh, it's just shit. Like, this just sucks. And that's not a place that we want to be. We want to be in a place where we can clearly see solutions, but also clearly see what's happening for what it is. And we need to walk through that. And so for me, the mycelium is that. It's the yin. It's the very dominant presence underground where there's very little light or no light at all. It's very damp, it's dark. It's just for us, that'd be a really inhospitable place to be. And I don't think we've acknowledged how important of a role it plays. And I think that's maybe why we're so focused on this hyper-masculinity, the ripping away of the divine feminine, which is all coming back. And this community reassures me that every time I'm here. So that's why I'm so grateful to be a part of this community and to be spreading mycelium all over the place. We really are just like these fungal threads. So it always comes back almost to me for mycelium. I'd really have been pretty disheartened with humans lately, and it's hard for me to have enough hope for me to be like, oh, we can save ourselves. Although I know it is possible, I've seen what we do also. So I'm stuck in that middle ground of I know it's possible and we can do it. This sucks. But the more we keep spreading this mycelial thread around, the more it acts just like fungal hyphae do. So the way fungal hyphae act is that they're going out and they're actually learning their environment little by little, relaying that to a central nervous system, and then learning how to break down that thing in the most efficient way possible. It's not struggling with it. It's not denying that it's there. It's really fully accepting the presence of that material and being able to learn it, understand it enough to break it down, disseminate it so that plants can use it or protozoa can move through it. It's really an incredible thing that's happening, and the same exact thing is happening with all of us. We're all connected in that same way. We just can't necessarily see the threads. We can feel them, though. Most people can feel that thread. And I do think the more we can nurture that thread, the more we can relay this back to a central nervous system or a central consciousness, if you will, and actually learn how to adapt to all of these crazy things that for most people are really overwhelming. But if we can walk through it, understand it fully, embrace the suck, and move forward with that, we can find solutions a lot easier. But it's in that denial phase where we can't even see that there's solutions that need to be found. We're just like, no, everything's fine. And that's an interesting place where I think a lot of people in society are today. They haven't fully accepted that. Another thing that mycelium that allows me to accept in my mind is death and dying. It's literally the embracement of death and dying. It is decaying things at an exponential rate. It's like one of the world's best decomposers, if not the world's best decomposer. It is the epitome of death and dying. But only through that death and dying can we reverberate and create new life. So we got to let these old concepts of denial and fear that are holding us back, we got to let those die, and the mycelium literally needs to take it over and disseminate it back into a neutral energy that we can use in a more positive way. I see us all doing the same thing with each other. We're basically just like one giant universe, just like that mycelial thread. We just need to keep nurturing that, and then we'll learn together how to solve all of these issues, I have no doubt.
I love where this is going. There's this thread here about stories and how, as humans, we're just story people, and we need the right story to know, and we need to know where we are inside of our story, because if we're not sure how stories work, it might seem like this is the last chapter, and what did we do all this for? But one of my favorite teaching tools is to go to old stories, the ones that we call fairy tales for some reason, or the older the story, the better. And when we go there, we see something happening in old stories. Usually it's the youngest daughter or the youngest of three brothers, and there's something wrong in the kingdom, and something needs to be changed. And the old Russian fairy tales are the best. There's this one where the youngest brother needs to go get something for the father, and in the course of all of this, he finds all this trouble, and he's betrayed and even beheaded and dismembered, and then put back together. And there's this theme that sometimes we forget, where we really need to know how to encounter trouble, because that's what makes us, that's what shows us what our own gifts are, and reveals whatever gifts the world might have for us, and that's where healing happens. We talk a lot in our schools about trauma and what it does to us and how it changes who we are and how we learn. And I've been thinking these days that trauma is a rite of passage that hasn't quite been completed or hasn't been framed in the right way. Education is about putting ourselves through something difficult so that we can find out who we are and discover our strengths. And when that isn't held in the right way, it can be traumatizing. I'm very, very much interested in rites of passage and what that means. Sometimes a math test is a rite of passage, but we also do things in this community, actual rites of passage, where we hold a camp and we're gonna let these young people be in the wilderness by themselves for 2 nights or 4 nights, without food, without water, but knowing that their community's holding them. And the key to that is the community that holds the young person as they go through their trial and welcomes them back to the community and recognizes a new person, a stronger person, a more mature person, a person who is ready to become something. And what you were saying was so dear to my heart, that there's a place for everyone here. And every one of us has this incredible gift, and we don't even know what that's gonna be yet. And our teachers can't see it, and we can't see it in ourselves. Our parents don't know what it is, but we're gonna find out if we go through the right trials, find the right trouble, and that our community can hold us and welcome us back in through a rite of passage. So as a teacher, I'm dealing with children and trying to craft rites of passages so that they can discover their gifts and see it in themselves. and to hold this space of there aren't mistakes. If we're learning, there's no such thing as a mistake. We can do something wrong 10,000 times, 150,000 times, doesn't matter, because we're learning to do it the right way. And as long as we're alive, we're going to keep trying, and we got to look at ourselves in that scientific way, see what works, what doesn't work, make an adjustment, but there's no mistakes. There aren't mistakes. That word means nothing. And through that, we're going like these, so collectively, you guys are documenting this collective rite of passage that we're in. We don't know the solution, but we're going to know the solution right at the moment we need to know it. And so that's the story that we're in right now. We're in the scary part of the story. We're also in the most beautiful part of the story. Look at this. There's not really much to be scared of today. But we're in this part of the story, and as long as we are thinking that way and we don't believe that mistakes are possible, that we're learning or becoming, each one of us has a part to play, a part in the play or a part in the song, a part in the harmony, then just at the exact right moment when we need the knowledge, it's going to be right there for us.
Thanks, Dea. Wow, it's really different to answer the question after you hear everyone. So I wanted to mention, when this was, I think, because this is really kind of about the obstacle, right? It's ourselves first, it's trust. We really trusting in ourselves and trusting in each other. And so even in the process of putting this panel, I reached out to Goldie and Lydia, and I'm like, I listened to Jake and Marin's podcast. I'm like, I cannot be on this panel. I won't be able to keep up, And it was that self-doubt and that obstacle of not owning my own gifts, even though it's apparent and I hear it, and the community and your hugs and your support, we still, I think that's a very common thread. And so the honesty of how we are really doing, really cultivating that with each other, that with social media, we've really gotten in this place where it's a projection, and you create these stories, again, the story of who that person or what they're doing or what their project, and it's like we really need to get into social permaculture has really helped me to understand, I am that zone. Starts at 0, right, Goldie? She's taken the real permaculture classes. So if I'm 0, what's in this next zone around me? That's going to be my family, my partner, my tight friends, and then you ripple into that next. That's going to be your project or your work. Maybe it's your spiritual group, a club you're in, a sport. So you've got that next concentric ring, and then it broadens out maybe institutionally, right? You're getting into the whole school system, and then you're getting into your whole, the whole energy fair, our whole group of us. But so it goes always back to that zone 0. It's like, how am I? How am I taking care of myself? And I'm learning a new place of trust with like all of us. And so it's like that open heart space. Because how many little glitches do you think I heard about in this week prior to the build, right? Or conflicts, relational. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Is we've been really led into a transactional-based society. And so if we can get back into relational is the top priority. Ultimately, for me, I didn't care if we were missing 5 vendors and a food truck and a music act or a cord was busted. Ultimately, what mattered was how the crew was communicating with each other and how they were relating to each other. Because when we take that time, and so that's Brett and I talked about this on the way here, it's like time seems to feel like the biggest one, that we all have so many pieces we're working and carrying, and we've complicated our lives to this level that how do we take that step back to operate at the pace of nature? And so I see that we're not going with the seasons. Well, I want to say we are. When you can start to really learn to work and live with the seasons, we should be slowing down. That's the death in the winter. And so with the indigenous practices, that's really come in of learning to operate at their pace. We're at that peak of energy and the summer and that solstice, you know, we're kind of coming off of that now. And so it's a really good time for this potent energy of us coming together. But then we need to start re-evaluating, doing the post piece of the event and slowing it down and taking that time. So in the winter is when we can really get creative, really coming up with the next solutions. And then it buds again in the spring. But for some reason, I'm finding really too, as a local grassroots community organizer, and it's been consistent from me being in Chicago to the Front Range to here, is you often don't, you have to make yourself slow down that pace because it's not going to slow down around you. And that's the biggest challenge. So, you know, an example is the wellness panel was happening this morning, and I was like, this is amazing. And Brett and I sat and we ate breakfast. And then I went behind and I listened to it and I said, I'm going to do my practice because I was going, I need to go to demos and Chelsea's at vending and Crystal's at the wellness. And so I really re-examined, is that for them that you want to go give that support, but where do I really need it? Because if I come in strength of myself, it's going to ripple. But we've been lacking that trust that things work themselves. They really do. And it starts to vibrate around. I mean, look, it starts to vibrate around you what you can bring in. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I am wondering right now, I'm feeling curious about if each of you, you know, like Dea, kind of walking the line between two worlds where you're having to deal with public schools or the county commissioners or, you know, like being a part of both worlds where you're aware of what's possible, but then maybe still there's challenges because of bureaucracy or whatever. And if maybe even if you have like a personal anecdote of a story that has really inspired you to keep on your path and keep going. And you know, I'll share that I had an experience just recently with the Energy Fair. We decided to, instead of having a final meeting, you know, like how our meetings normally look, Lisa invited us all to do an Inipi, a sweat lodge, as our final like meeting. And it was so beautiful, and like there were, of course, 10,000 little details that needed to be figured out, but kind of like what Lisa was saying, what's really important in these last moments is that we can really relate to each other and connect in a different way. And for me, just remembering that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, and if that can happen here, like what if big corporations were doing sweat lodges together? You know, like it's possible, right? So yeah, that's just a personal story of mine that like opens my heart and reminds me that this work is important and what we're doing is important. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about like your relating to people who maybe aren't so familiar with like this idea of a more beautiful future. So.
Wow.
Well, either I'm wondering if anyone if a story is coming up, like a personal story of being touched by having your heart open with someone who maybe isn't so familiar with this whole idea. Yeah. And if not, like what inspires you daily to just keep on keeping on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just have come through like a really interesting couple of years in the education world, and I want to shout out my friend Christy Knight over there, one of my co-collaborators. When sometimes the school structure isn't working for us and we need to pull back and homeschool for a while, and because our loyalty is to the kids in the future, it's not to the institution. The institution is there to serve us, hopefully. And we saw the need to start something new, and we've got a little project we call Creative Courage, which is for the kids so that we can bring them art and music and passion, whether it's in the school, whether it's in the park, whether it's homeschool. We don't care whether it's after school. It can be what it needs to be, because we can't expect a public school to serve all of our needs. We don't expect to drop our kids off and have everything perfect and we can pick them up and, hey, they got educated, great. No, we're going to take responsibility in whatever way, and everything that we put out is well, here's a what really comes to mind is after a lot of people in our community were very disappointed with how public school was going for a while, especially coming out of those recent years. And somebody that I know pretty well asked me, well, what is it like? They saw me going back into the school and starting to teach again. Well, what is it going to take to turn that place around? Like how many teachers does it take to turn a school around? And I'm thinking to myself, one person can go into a school like ours and completely turn it around without even doing anything other than showing up with a beautiful attitude, ready to have fun, ready to dream the future. One person is all it takes to make a huge change. With 2 people, it's way more fun. And with 3 people, there's nothing that can't be done. It's amazing. And it's actually so easy because in these institutions right now, the funny thing is nobody's really stopping you from coming with passion and love and vision. We think that, oh, we can't do it because it's an institution, but nobody's actually stopping you. If you want to go in to a school and teach from your heart, the thing is, if you do it, you might get people might say, hey, what's this guy doing right now? What's she doing? But you really get nothing but support, nothing but just an unbelievable uplift from everywhere, from the community, from the school, from the kids, from the universe, from everywhere. So even though things seem so hopeless and so heavy, the world's just waiting for each of us to step up and do it. And it's amazing the energetic return as soon as you step in and start to do it.
That was great. What comes to mind for me is, first of all, Jake and I are very blessed to be people that have been able to find elders in our lives and find people that are really helping guide us and enable us to do what we're doing. And one person that is just endlessly inspiring to us is our friend Jorgen. And Jorgen Andersson, he's a Swedish man, and he runs a farm called Fjällbätta in the mid to north part of Sweden, in this really beautiful village. And what inspires me is that his story is very interesting. He started as a conventional farmer, and one day was just like, this isn't right, this isn't working, something's wrong. And he didn't have any land, but over decades, he convinced the village to let him graze his sheep on all of their yards, on the ski slopes, on the hotel lawn, on everything. And so he has cultivated this incredibly beautiful community, and young people just flock to him because he just had this openness and this awareness that what he was doing was a movement towards the better future that he wanted to see. And so he's just like made his life about enabling young people who have such passion and desire to connect with land and connect with themselves. And he's just a really incredible person. And I just love the tenacity of like, it's not that you have to own land in order to graze sheep. It's not that you have to like participate in the structures that we think we have to be a part of in order to enact change. It took him decades to just get his neighbors to understand that it was possible to do things slightly differently, and that they didn't need to mow their lawns, and that the sheep could mow the lawns much better and create food for the community. But so it's examples like that of the tenacity of knowing that it's maybe going to take a long time, and that the change doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And one thing that Jorgen says is that, all good ideas, there's a time when the time has come for that idea. And I think that we are in a really beautiful moment right now where things are starting to feel like they're falling apart, but that's where the good ideas can really come from. There's a great quote by a Spanish philosopher named Jose Ortega, and essentially what it says is that once we can kind of get past all of the conditioning, basically we need to allow ourselves to be sort of shipwrecked. And what he says is that the only good ideas come from the shipwrecked. All else is farcical rhetoric. It's not real. But it's when you truly are confronted with the reality of things, that's when you can start to really bring in these amazing solutions. And luckily, we have elders and teachers who are, I guess are psychic or something. Just we're able to see into the future. And there's so many books, there's so many ways that we can move forward, and we can understand how many amazing ideas there are out there. But to have the tenacity to try, even in the face of that adversity, and for Jorgen to be where he's at now is just, it's just endlessly inspiring to me.
Yeah. I just wanted to add a little bit more on that story to reiterate just the beauty that we saw in that was, a village that might have seen our friend Jorgen as the kook with the sheep and annoying, and they pooped all over the roads and all these things. But over decades, they began to see that vision and that potential, and the village itself took pride in what he's doing. They love those sheep, and they actively engage with those sheep. So that story he's trying to tell with the land bled into that community as a whole, and I think that's very powerful for him to be so patient and wait. And I think it's been inspiring me to also take that into my life, is that if I continue to sit in that place of what I know is true in my own vision, people will also see that beauty and accept that in their community as well.
So anecdotally, in my own life, the healing that I've seen from people taking mushrooms specifically has been so inspiring that it's given me a new idea. I do think that the majority of the world is operating the way it is because we have sick people. And these sick people may be sick because they're mentally, a lot of us are sick. Like, it's just something that we need to accept and move through so that we can heal it. So I think it's through that sickness, basically. I think of like a trichoderma mold trying to take a mycelium over. Ultimately, when that mycelium takes back over that mold, that mycelium's so much stronger. So it really is like, in the face of diversity, it's really gonna build us up if we really allow it to. I think if we just get people to a healthier state of being, we're gonna inspire so much change that we didn't even think was possible. And I think we're walking around, a lot of us, I say we as a whole, but that's only because the majority of our society is statistically very sick. So there's a lot of people walking around in pain and not feeling good. And how can you contribute to the world in a positive way if you're walking around in pain, not feeling good all the time? There's no way you can think about anything else besides absorbing your own pain. So I really, truly think if we can get people to a healthier state, my role is to play that role through mushrooms. And anecdotally, the healing that I've seen in my own life through people using mushrooms has been so enlightening that I will never go back. This family mushroom farm is like, we're gonna make this happen no matter what, specifically because people need it. It's a food as a medicine, which is such an antiquated idea that we still haven't incorporated into our society. And we need to understand that that is like one of the most basic things that we need to do for ourselves and for each other, is literally just be healthier. Like, consume less processed foods, consume more natural products, consume more mushrooms specifically. Like, I'm just gonna quote this meta-study that just came out this year, and it's a meta-study is looking at a bunch of different studies all over the world. So it's a conglomerate of a bunch of different studies. And they surmise that cultures that eat mushrooms 3 to 5 times per week at least have a 46% reduction on average in all dementia-related illness. That's just touching on one aspect of our health. And that's a super crucial aspect because Alzheimer's is creeping up into the 6th leading cause, maybe the 5th, of death in America. And that's really, really scary because that's literally a loss of cognition. And how can you ever show up, even as yourself, if you cannot cognitively even show up for yourself? There's no way you could show up for yourself or anybody else. Let's just get our people healthier through diet specifically. Like, it's really just incorporating more mushrooms into your diet in any way possible is probably gonna be a really beneficial thing. So I'm just gonna advocate for that. Eat more mushrooms. Like, we gotta eat more mushrooms.
I'll second that, Tyler. Yeah. I guess just a little background. In this last year, my father passed away in December, and Brett and I were on a road trip, and so it was the day after we left from the holidays, and we got the call, and so he had been caretaking my mother full time, and so I immediately had stepped into that role. So the last 9 months, I'm involved in these local projects. I had to step into a new place of how do I communicate when I'm so used to this in-person juiciness flow. And it went back to that trust of like the relationships we built. So I've been staying in Indiana. So any of you that are out there in northern Indiana, I need tribe there. I really do. So it took me into a new depth, and it's bringing up, as you're all speaking about death and that dark and that dampness and those places that are like just, yeah, you know, you kind of want to crawl and you're like, this doesn't feel comfortable. I don't want to be in this. Yet it's universal. We all are going through these cycles of this birth and the growth and into eldership and into death. And it's allowed me to really develop a longer reaching network with all of you. You know, that it's like, no, we can do this. And then with the technology, I think everyone kind of stepped it up with COVID because we had to, I don't know if it's stepping it up, but we had to communicate through your Zoom and your online platforms and your other places to actually see some people sometimes. And so it did give me that positive where I had to learn those tools before. But the current, that's just more of a personal, but the current with the community that an obstacle or with a story is really around this mindful land use solutions group we started because we were looking at changing the way that we live, right? And how we build, and with the natural building being so prominent in our community and the do-it-yourself, and that we're trying to work with our local resources, we've become so disenfranchised from our government. We've been so disenfranchised, you know, with that system and the polarization that happens. So to go back locally, and I was really afraid. You know, I was, one of our friends in our group, they're like, you're gonna be working with the local politicians next. And I was like, no, I like this nitty gritty. Give me the chainsaw and the wood and the dirt, I'm good. But it was a very natural flow to go, okay, if I go in and it's not an adversarial approach, these are my neighbors. They live in this county too. You know, they're our friends. They own the farm down the street. You know, they work at the food coalition, or they've been working at the Chamber of Commerce, whatever it is. These are people that have been building our community, and we voted these commissioners to be our representatives. So even if we don't agree all of the time, we have to come in looking with the solution together and looking at the full spectrum of the picture, not always pointing out that problem. Because so often it's the same in this event. You know, it's like, hey, Lisa, you should do that. Hey, have you tried that? It's like, no, but we would welcome you. If you have an idea, please come in and let's support each other in fulfilling this new reimagining. Because so often it's like it's them over there. Well, they made that decision, right? Or the county pushed that on us, or the state's pushing. So with this group, super empowering, we kept at the state square foot minimum. We can live small. I could stay living in my tiny house. This is huge. Then we could have our sheds to store our materials. We worked with the county to get that. Now we're working on our codes with Regulation 43 and our sanitation. One of which I wasn't sure we could ever make possible. Thanks, Liza, for being on that panel too. No, not representing as a commissioner, but you are one. So thank you. That it was a title with our composting toilets. We all think it's a public health issue, so we're all going public health, and you can't, why are you pooing? When we're like, why are you pooing in your water? Talk about public health. Let's use this as nutrients in the ground. And it's a title transfer issue, I think you said, with a property. So it's really a paperwork issue. So I'm really getting encouraged that by looking at our locals and our government agencies that ripple out, that when we can back those people that we've put in that position to represent us, but we stand behind them with our thoughts and actions and words, and we really align to support them when it does get tough. Because as those levels go up, do you think it's any easier to then go, oh, well, now we have to work with the state senators and our representatives, and then the state level, and then the federal level? That the people in those positions, that's a lot of weight that they're carrying on their shoulders for us. So thank you. And that's been really inspiring for me, because I've seen it. We're working together. We're diving into those. How do we now catalyze? We've grown our local. And we did come in a little feisty, because it's natural to do that. And then we're just like, oh, Wait, we are all on the same team? Oh, we're going to figure out some solutions so that we aren't displacing anyone in our community. We're going to value each person in our community regardless of your economic status. That's huge. And that's where we're transitioning that financial capital isn't your number one resource. But yeah, I think I'll end with that. I'll keep going. Oh.
15.
Who's going to start the next one? Who hasn't started?
So it's 2:15, which is crazy because that went so fast. So maybe, yeah, if we could open it up maybe to some questions, if anyone has any thoughts or reflections or something they want to ask one of our panelists, we have some time for that.
Okay, who's got some questions? Anybody? All right. So just say your name, even if we know you.
Hi, my name is Brett. This is a question for everyone, but what help do each one of you need from us?
That's a beautiful question. For me, if you feel inclined to help with this landfill inoculation project, I kind of need all hands on board when I have enough mycelium ready to go inoculate and kind of get various things figured out there. So it's kind of crappy work, but it's going to be pretty fun. So yeah, reach out to me or Danielle, my wife, at Alpine Valley Mushrooms if you have any interest in that.
Watch my movie? I'm not quite sure. That's a really good question. Maybe you've got an answer for that. It's probably something I need to think more about, actually, because I do need help, and I don't know where I need it, but I know I need it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say either. I think that I'm just grateful that people are listening, and we're just really grateful to have an audience of any kind. And so, yeah, just you can check out our work at deathinthegarden.org, and that's a good way to maybe find ways to help us. You can check out our essays and podcasts and stuff like that.
The kids at the Crestone Charter School, especially the high school students, desperately need mentors. We have a community filled with master builders, master artists, master food creators, incredible adults who might just be ready to step into the role of elder, because an elder is someone who starts to focus on giving back. The kids, this school is so under-resourced. And if you love this community, if you see a future for this community, then, and you've got skills, if you've got a business, if you've got something that you're good at that you think you might want to share with the future, consider becoming a mentor. The Crestone Charter School has a structure for this. You don't need to do it through the school, but that's one way you can do it. Don't do it for the money. They don't have the money. Do it for the future. If you are comfortable financially, especially because you've created something and you like that thing to go to the future, I see Adam out there. He's been one of the best mentors. He shares his skills. He shares his knowledge. He's creating, he's just one example, but the kids who come out of his mentorship have skills that they can use in this community or wherever they choose to go. So if you want to help, consider becoming a mentor.
I thought you already had the honey-do list. Okay, it's long. No, but really, my focus, because when you're in a role like mine, it's really interesting because I'm really trying to weave everyone together. And so my push with each person is always, go with your passion and your talent and your skill set of what you can contribute. We so often do things because we feel like we have to, and then it doesn't work. But you could try out different hats too. So even with our organization, you can try out different hats, and if it doesn't work, move on to something else, And so for us, as we've expanded, I mean, this is amazing. We have people coast to coast, you know, and a lot of that, I do want to mention, you know, Diamond of Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Leah, and then Rex Bear with the Leak Project. They have put us out now to a very large audience, which is really cool and amazing because we want to meet with all of you like-minded people. On the other hand, that is so scary to me in this little place of like, how do we organize these things? So they have podcasts of like, you know, I don't even know how many thousands of people, you know, we're talking. So we need tech support. We need like database management kind of support so we can keep organized. And honestly, financial, we all are really giving this out of the passion of our heart because we want to do it, but I want to start seeing that those people, that they're getting compensated in some ways for their skill sets. And we also want to allow this event, and Goldie coined this in the spirit of giving, that, well, it is, I know, but instead of saying like it is a free event, but we want to say like in the spirit of giving, if you have an exchange, whether it's your volunteer time, we need help tomorrow cleaning up too. So that's really concrete. And then the last is the free box. If you're here, please just put clothes away, take the boxes, because whose responsibility is that? That's always my question. Whose responsibility is that to hang up the clothes and the items that you bring there, or to break down those cardboard boxes and recycle them? And so when you see things like that, just jump in, be the solution, and have fun. This gets heavy, like really crafting a life where we get to grieve together, we get to break bread together, we get to celebrate together and cut loose, because we need it. We need that levity and that peace with us. So I'll leave it on. I hope to see y'all on the dance floor later. That's what you can do to support us, because we're going to have a closing ceremony later.
Does anyone else have another question they want to ask the group?
You guys don't have a comment? Because I know you have a lot of resources over there, you two.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about, as everyone was answering, you know, that I think a lot of times it's a lot easier to talk about stuff than to actually do stuff. And I started my podcast now 5 years ago or so, and I was talking about all of these ideas about community and about working together and about the land, but hadn't actually done any of that stuff. And the point was always to get to that place, but it's felt like such a relief to actually be in community and actually be here full time and actually do the things that I sort of idealized in a way and get into that nitty gritty thing. And so for people that are here or who are new here, who feel like they actually want to participate in something, like there's so many opportunities to volunteer for events or at gardens. Like there's also such a big older population here. You know, I'm helping out at 2 gardens, and the reflection I get constantly is like, we haven't seen a young person here like ever. And that's really surprising to me, because gardens are extremely hard work and like backbreaking work even for me. And I know my generation likes to talk a lot about ecosystems and getting back to the land and working together. And I think it's really important that we actually do that and not just talk about it, because so much more comes up in the experience of the thing. So.
Yeah, I guess if anyone's interested in helping me with the home tours or ongoing education series, we're always looking for people that are doing cool building projects, and we'll help put together volunteers to come work at your place. And yeah, and then if anyone is building a cool home, it's getting harder and harder to find people that are doing alternative building. Maybe not harder and harder, but I like to support the people that are building alternatively. So if you are or know someone that is, have them contact me, because I want to meet them.
Okay, I think Zach has a question, and I know we're on a little bit of a time frame, but I'm going to let him finish. He's finished a couple times with good questions.
Oh, really? Oh, good, thank you. I like stutter and stuff sometimes. Hey, so I really love what you're all getting at with this, and like I think it's really important that we get further into connecting and using the struggles of life and things, and Well, anyway, not to be a major bummer, but like for instance, for example, like I was suicidal in the 2nd grade, and that's been my whole life. I still have struggle like finding happiness and stuff still, but I know like teacher dude, sometimes it's just a teacher who it makes you second guess what you've learned in life so far, and it's really hard for all of you. It's really hard to really recognize how you've impacted another person's life, and also like you, like with somebody was, I think it was you were talking about struggles, and or somebody was talking about struggles plus like people who could bring light into people's lives too. With what I've gone through has forced me to be like who I am. So I absolutely understand how important it is. Like I became the complete opposite that I learned like when I was a kid. So now I know how important it is to take time and be positive and all that stuff. Plus, you never know how you've impacted somebody's life, because I've had moments in my life where it was just a quick moment with somebody, but they made me realize, gave me like another way to think about life. And so along the way, for all of you too, like you might be riding on a bus maybe, and you just have a conversation with somebody. You talk about your experiences in your lives. You'll never know that that person went on to drop everything and move to Florida and live on a sailboat or something. But you'll never know that. But even if we all like had $1 million to do things for good people, I bet you, like when you passed on and you looked at your lives, you would think, oh, that your favorite stuff was just what you did from your heart, just being a good person, and that everything matters. Like you'd be surprised, but it all matters. And yeah, that's kind of yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So I love what you're all talking about. Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Okay, so anything else you guys want to say to finish up? Dreaming? I don't want to. Oh, do you have a question? Okay. Tell. Oh, okay. Just say your name.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cherie, and I'm a vendor back here, and I'm really fortunate that I can hear the panels from back there. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, but every panel yesterday and today, it's almost too much. I've told a couple of people this, the profundity of what you're saying. Each person that offers another measure of magic and wisdom and healing and connection. I've been moved to tears so many times in the last 2 days. You'll start and you'll go around once, and that alone is so much that I have to leave and go to my booth and just take a minute to digest the quality and the caliber and the vibration of what you share. And so I'm saying it to you on behalf of everybody who sat in every one of those seats. I never imagined that I would get this kind of nourishment and reassurance this weekend. So much respect and so much, I mean, the courage and the work and the hard work that you're doing, we're all so benefited from it. And thank you.
Thank you, Cherise. I think we're all crying together, right?
Actually, that's something that when I think about reimagining my future, it's that we're all crying together a lot more often. So thank you.
Thank you, dreamers. We're all dreamers, right? But thank you for everything you're doing. And I think this panel was a great way to, we're not finished yet, but just to kind of bring things around full circle and talk about so many issues that, you know, there's so much information and people are specializing and working in all these areas, and just to be able to share all that. I mean, I'm pretty involved in some things in this community, and I always learn so much at the Energy Fair from what's going on. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was happening with that. So thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.